The store was just about to close. The tired hum of the lights flickered overhead as the last few customers made their way out, leaving behind an eerie silence. But little did anyone know, something terrifying was about to unfold. In the back corner of the store, a disabled girl was finishing her tasks, unaware of the storm brewing just inches away. And then it happened. HOA Karen, furious over a trivial mistake, began to lash out, her voice rising with every accusation. The poor girl, vulnerable and afraid, tried to explain, but Karen's wrath only grew. She had no idea who was watching. The CEO, a man with everything to lose, had been in the store the entire time, hidden in the shadows, watching every moment unfold through hidden cameras. And as the situation escalated, he knew that the truth was about to come to light. No one, especially Karen, could escape the consequences. It was closing time at the local convenience store. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, flickering now and then, casting long shadows across the aisles. Outside, the last of the evening's customers trickled out, leaving the space quiet, save for the soft shuffle of feet and the rustling of the cleaning crew preparing for the night. Among the workers was a young girl, barely in her teens, disabled and determined to do her part despite her challenges. She was focused, her hands moving carefully to finish the closing tasks, unaware of the storm that was about to break. In the front of the store, Karen, the HOA board member notorious for her strict and often cruel demeanor, stood near the registers. She had lingered longer than usual, waiting for the store to close. Something about the place irked her, and tonight she wasn't in the mood for tolerance. She spotted the young girl, moving slowly but diligently, and a scowl crept across her face. "You're not done yet?" Karen sneered, her tone sharp and accusatory. "Everyone else is gone, and you're still messing around. Lazy, that's what you are." The girl's face flushed with embarrassment, her heart racing as she tried to finish her task without drawing attention. But Karen wasn't done. The verbal jabs grew harsher, more pointed, each word a blow to the girl's fragile confidence. What Karen didn't know was that someone had been watching the entire scene unfold. Someone with power, someone who wasn't about to let this injustice slide. The CEO of the company, the one person Karen never expected to encounter, was still inside, silently observing. And as the situation grew worse, he knew one thing for sure. Karen's behavior was about to have consequences she couldn't possibly imagine. The final rush of customers had come and gone, and the store was finally quiet. The hum of the overhead lights became a steady soundtrack to the closing shift, filling the empty spaces with their rhythmic buzz. In the far corner of the store, 14-year-old Lily, a disabled girl with cerebral palsy, moved methodically through her closing duties. Her wheelchair rolled softly across the polished floor, her eyes scanning the shelves and counters as she carefully wiped them down, ensuring everything was in place for the morning shift. It wasn't easy for her, but she was determined to finish her job, something that had always been important to her, even though she knew some people saw her disability before they saw her effort. The other workers had already punched out, leaving her alone in the store, with only the closing tasks left to do. She had grown used to the quiet after hours, using it as a time to reflect and focus. Despite her condition, Lily never let it define her. She had always been resilient, always pushing forward, even when others doubted her abilities. But tonight, she had no idea that things were about to take a dark turn. In the front of the store, Karen stood near the counter, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the space with an air of superiority. She was the type of person who relished any opportunity to criticize, to point out the flaws in others. And tonight, Lily would be her target. Karen had stayed behind. Well, after the store had emptied, under the pretense of getting a last-minute item. But she wasn't really there for that. She had been observing Lily for some time now, watching her with a sense of disdain. Lily had noticed Karen when she first entered the store. The woman's presence was hard to ignore. Middle-aged, tall, and impeccably dressed in her expensive-looking outfit, Karen looked like she owned the place. Lily had hoped that Karen wouldn't stay long, but as the minutes ticked by, Karen's patience seemed to wear thin. She was glaring at the shelves, tapping her foot in an impatient rhythm, clearly growing frustrated with the wait. Lily could feel her discomfort rising, but she kept her focus on her task. She didn't want to draw attention to herself. She just wanted to finish and leave as quickly as possible. But Karen apparently had other plans. What's taking so long? Karen's voice cut through the silence of the store, her tone sharp and demanding. Why are you still cleaning? The store is closed, isn't it? Lily paused, glancing up. She knew the woman was speaking to her, but she wasn't sure why she felt the need to say something so harsh. She had seen this woman before, always strutting around like she owned everything. She was a member of the HOA, and Lily had heard rumors about her bad attitude, but she had never interacted with her directly. Until now. I'm just finishing up, Lily said softly, her voice betraying a hint of unease. She was trying to keep her composure, not wanting to make a scene. But Karen wasn't going to let it slide. Finishing up? Karen scoffed, taking a few steps closer, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. It's the end of the day, and you're still here dragging your feet. You know, you people like you just can't seem to do anything right, can you? Lily's heart skipped a beat. The words stung more than she wanted to admit, but she didn't show it. She just kept wiping down the counter in front of her, pretending not to hear Karen's cruel taunts. But the truth was, Karen's words hit harder than she realized. Every time someone made a comment about her disability, it reminded her of how different she was from everyone else, how hard she had to work just to be seen as equal. Karen, however, was relentless. I don't understand why they keep you around, she continued, now standing just a few feet from Lily. You're such a burden on everyone. I'm sure everyone wishes they could get rid of you. Lily's hands trembled as she wiped down the counter, her face flushed with humiliation. She knew Karen wasn't saying these things because she cared. Karen wasn't a kind person. She just wanted to tear people down. She wanted to make others feel as small as she did. You should be grateful for the job, Karen added, her voice dripping with disdain. But then again, I'm not sure you're capable of doing much at all. I'm surprised they even let you work here. Lily's breathing quickened, her mind racing. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in her throat. What could she say to a woman like Karen, who clearly didn't care about her or her struggles? She wanted to defend herself, to show Karen that she was more than her disability, but the fear of confrontation held her back. But Karen wasn't done. She stepped closer, now standing directly over Lily, looking down at her with an almost predatory gleam in her eyes. You know, I've been watching you for a while. You don't belong here. People like you should stay in the background. Don't you know that? Lily looked up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and confusion. She had heard enough. She wasn't going to let Karen walk all over her, not anymore. But before she could gather the strength to speak, Karen's voice cut through the silence again. You're pathetic, Karen spat. It's people like you who drag this world down. I'm surprised you even have the nerve to come here every day. You should just quit. The words felt like daggers in Lily's chest, but just as she opened her mouth to respond, something unexpected happened. The sound of a door opening in the back of the store caught her attention. She glanced toward the sound, her eyes widening in disbelief. There, standing at the back entrance of the store, was the CEO of the company, the very man Karen thought was long gone. He was watching them silently from the shadows of the office. He had been inside this whole time, observing everything through a hidden security feed. His sharp eyes took in the entire scene. Karen's cruel harassment, Lily's helplessness, and he wasn't about to let this injustice slide. The CEO knew something needed to be done. He had been quietly watching from the shadows, knowing that Karen's time was running out. But for now, he stayed hidden, calculating his next move. The tension in the store was palpable, and he could feel the weight of the moment. Karen had no idea that the tables were about to turn, and Lily, though frightened, was beginning to realize that she wasn't as alone as she thought. The darkness of the store had just shifted, and everything was about to change. The tension in the store thickened, pressing down on Lily like an invisible weight. The harshness of Karen's words was overwhelming, But even more suffocating was the sense of being trapped. The small space between the shelves felt like a prison, and every harsh syllable Karen spat made it feel even tighter. Lily tried to swallow the lump in her throat, pushing her hands harder against the counter, but the shaking wouldn't stop. She had to keep herself together, but everything inside her screamed to run, to escape this nightmare. Karen, oblivious to the effect her words were having, was basking in the power she held over Lily. She could see the girl's discomfort, the way her face flushed red with humiliation, and it fueled her. With every second, she felt more emboldened. The girl's vulnerability only made Karen's cruel words feel more justified, like she was exerting control over someone who was less than her. Karen continued, her voice like nails scraping across a chalkboard. I just don't get it. Why even bother working if you can't keep up with the rest of us? Why are you here at all? It's embarrassing, really. Lily felt her heart pound in her chest as she pressed her lips together, trying to stop the tears that were threatening to spill. She wanted to shout back, to tell Karen that she was just as capable as anyone else. She wanted to scream that no one had the right to treat her like this. But the words never came. She was frozen, paralyzed by a mix of fear and anger, unsure of how to respond to this woman who clearly didn't care about her feelings. Karen's eyes narrowed as she looked down at Lily, standing taller and prouder than ever, basking in the sense of control she had over the girl. I've worked with so many people in my time, and let me tell you, you're the worst of the bunch. Just useless, lazy, a drain on everyone. Lily's chest tightened at Karen's every word, each one punctuating the helplessness she felt. Was it really her fault? Was she really that bad? She had done everything she could to keep up, to show that she wasn't just the disabled girl, but someone who had a place in the world. And yet here was Karen, stripping away any hope Lily had left of seeing herself as capable. She gripped the armrests of her wheelchair, trying to steady herself, but her body trembled with the weight of Karen's cruelty. It felt like a nightmare, a cruel, never-ending barrage of insults, and Lily wanted to escape, but she couldn't. The store was empty, the lights were dimming, and the air felt thick with the heavy pressure of isolation. If she could just get away, find a place where she wasn't judged, where her disability didn't define her, she could breathe again. Karen, seeing that she had the upper hand, stepped closer. The clicking of her heels echoed in the silence, growing louder as she approached. Lily didn't look up, not daring to meet her gaze, afraid of what she might see. More disgust, more disdain. She could feel Karen's eyes on her, scanning her, and it made her skin crawl. Karen said, her voice lowering, almost too sweet, I bet you're just here to get attention. Some people use their disabilities to get sympathy. I wouldn't be surprised if that's all you're doing. Playing the pity card. Lily felt her heart break. Was that how people saw her? Was she just some kind of charity case, a symbol of what others could feel sorry for? Was that the only reason people kept her around? Because they thought she deserved sympathy? The thought was unbearable. She had never wanted anyone's pity. All she wanted was to be treated like a normal person, like anyone else. But Karen had made it clear that she would never see her that way. Karen was now standing directly in front of Lily, her gaze sharp, cruel. You don't belong here. You don't belong anywhere. I don't know why you even try. Lily's hands tightened on her wheelchair's handles, her nails biting into the smooth metal. Her heart raced in her chest, and her face was flushed with the mix of anger and hurt. She wanted to say something, anything to shut Karen down, to prove that she was more than this, more than the insult that Karen had reduced her to. But the words were stuck. What could she say? What was there to say to a woman who had already made up her mind about her? Just as Lily opened her mouth, Karen took a step back, her face curling into a smug grin. I'm sure the others would agree with me. You're just a burden, a joke, and if I had my way, I'd make sure you never worked another day in life. The words hit like a slap, knocking the air from Lily's lungs. It was hard to breathe, hard to think. The humiliation was unbearable, but it wasn't the worst of it. The worst part was the cold truth Karen was speaking. Lily had always feared this, being seen as weak, as someone who couldn't hold her own. And Karen had just confirmed it. To her, and perhaps to the world, Lily was nothing but a burden. But as Karen stepped back, seemingly satisfied with herself, Lily noticed something that caused her pulse to quicken. A flicker of movement in the back of the store caught her eye, a subtle shift barely noticeable in the shadows, but enough to make her heart race. Someone was watching them. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she thought she was imagining it. But then she saw the figure more clearly. A tall man standing in the dark corner near the back office, hidden from sight, watching intently. His presence was commanding, yet he remained silent, observing everything without making a sound. Lily couldn't believe her eyes. Could it be? Was that the CEO? Her mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest as she wondered how long he had been there, and more importantly, why he was watching. Karen, completely unaware of the man's presence, continued her tirade. "You should just quit. You're worthless here." She turned to walk away, but before she could, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Karen," the voice was calm, authoritative, too calm. Lily's eyes widened as she turned toward the CEO, who stepped out of the shadows, his gaze fixed on Karen. His presence was undeniable, and suddenly the store felt smaller, quieter, as if the very air had changed. Karen froze, her face paling as she looked up at him, realizing only then that she was no longer the one in control. The power dynamic had shifted in an instant. The CEO was here, and he had been watching everything unfold. "Do you really think that kind of behavior is acceptable?" His voice was sharp, cold, and it sent a chill down Lily's spine. Karen's face twisted, her arrogance faltering for the first time. I didn't," she stammered, but the CEO's gaze didn't waver. "I suggest you leave," he said, his tone making it clear that this was not a request. "And when you do, understand this, there are consequences for treating others with such cruelty. I'll be sure to make sure everyone knows about this." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise. Karen stood frozen, caught between the man's authority and her own dwindling sense of control. But Lily, for the first time that night, allowed herself to breathe. The fear that had gripped her chest loosened, and she felt a flicker of hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Someone had seen her. Someone had witnessed the cruelty, and now it was time for it to end. The atmosphere in the store shifted dramatically the moment the CEO stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow that seemed to dwarf Karen's presence. His calm demeanor was like a heavy stone dropped into a turbulent pond, the ripples of his authority spreading through the space, quieting everything. Karen's smirk faltered as she turned to face him, her eyes wide with sudden realization. For the first time that evening, she seemed unsure of herself, a flicker of fear replacing her usual arrogance. Lily, who had been trembling just moments before, now found herself frozen in a strange mix of emotions. The humiliation of Karen's insult still stung, but the presence of the CEO, the man who held the power, the man who had witnessed everything, was like a shield. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't powerless. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off her chest. Karen's voice trembled as she tried to regain her composure. "I don't know what you think you saw," but she began, but the CEO cut her off with a single cutting look. "I saw enough," he said, his tone not one of anger, but of controlled authority. He spoke as if his words were absolute, as if Karen's attempts to justify her actions were meaningless. He had seen the way she spoke to Lily, the cruelty in her tone, the way she had belittled the young girl, simply because she was different. There was no excuse, no justification that could make her actions acceptable. Karen opened her mouth to protest again, but the CEO wasn't having it. "Don't speak." "Not right now," he commanded. The power of his voice was undeniable. His calm authority seemed to press down on Karen like a physical force, silencing her before she could utter another word. Lily watched the exchange with wide eyes, her heart still racing, but now with a new sense of wonder. The CEO wasn't just a powerful man, he was a protector. And the way he handled Karen's bullying made it clear that he was the kind of person who would stand up for what was right, no matter who was involved. Karen, for the first time in the conversation, was speechless. She opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water, clearly not knowing how to navigate this new reality where she was no longer in control. Her usual arrogance and self-assurance were gone, replaced by a flustered, desperate energy. "I've been watching you, Karen," the CEO continued, his voice calm but firm. "And I've seen enough of this behavior to know that it needs to stop. Immediately." Karen's face flushed with anger, but she didn't speak. The CEO's words had left her stunned, unable to comprehend the shift in power. She had thought she could bully Lily, belittle her, and get away with it, just as she had done with so many others. But now, for the first time, she was being confronted, and she didn't know how to react. Lily could see the change in Karen's face, her self-assurance crumbling, the facade of control cracking before her eyes. For a brief moment, she felt a flicker of pity for the woman who had tormented her so mercilessly. But it was only a fleeting thought. The truth was, Karen had earned every bit of the discomfort she was now feeling. No one deserved to be treated the way she had treated Lily. No one deserved to be humiliated, degraded, and insulted without consequence. "Do you think this kind of behavior is acceptable in my store?" The CEO's words were directed at Karen, but his eyes never left Lily. The empathy in his gaze was unmistakable, and it filled her with an overwhelming sense of relief. He had witnessed everything. He knew what had happened, and he wasn't going to let Karen get away with it. Karen opened her mouth again, but this time her words were stuttered, almost panicked. I didn't mean it like that. It's just she's slow. She doesn't keep up. I was just trying to stop." The CEO's voice was like steel. "I don't need any more excuses from you. There's no defending what you did. You made a choice to attack someone who could barely defend themselves. And for what? Because you thought it was funny? Because you thought you could get away with it?" Karen's face turned bright red with a mixture of anger and humiliation. She was now caught in a corner, struggling to maintain her composure. Her usual bravado had dissolved, leaving her exposed. The CEO stepped closer, the power dynamic shifting further as he moved in with quiet authority. "I'm the one who decides who stays and who goes in this store," he said, his voice cold and final. "And I've made my decision. You're done here." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen someone stand up to Karen like this before. The woman's usual tactics, her snide remarks, her cruel criticisms had always gone unchecked, and now, for the first time, she was being held accountable. The satisfaction Lily felt was indescribable. It was as though a weight had been lifted, not just from her own shoulders, but from the entire store, from the very air in the room. Karen, now completely deflated, took a step back, her gaze shifting nervously. "You can't do this. You can't just fire me." Her voice was high-pitched, desperate. "I've been on this board for years. People know who I am." The CEO didn't flinch. "I can do anything I want. You've shown no respect for anyone in this store, especially not for Lily. I've seen enough to know that your behavior here is a reflection of how you treat others in your life. I'm done with it." Lily could feel the tension in the air dissipating. The cruelty, the bullying, it was all being replaced by something far stronger, justice. She had never imagined that someone would take a stand for her, especially not someone like the CEO. She had always been taught to keep her head down, to stay quiet in the face of adversity, but now she realized that wasn't the answer. Standing up for herself, demanding respect, was just as important. Karen, now visibly shaken, turned on her heel and stormed toward the door. But before she could leave, the CEO's voice stopped her. "I expect you to leave. And if you ever speak to Lily like that again, you'll be hearing from me. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." With that, Karen was gone, her footsteps echoing as she fled into the night, her pride shattered beyond repair. Lily, still sitting in her wheelchair, felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time that evening, the weight in her chest lifted. She had been seen. She had been protected. The CEO turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Lily nodded slowly, the words caught in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't speak. But as she looked up at the CEO, she realized that she wasn't just okay, she was stronger than she had ever been. "I'm okay," she finally whispered, the words carrying a weight of their own. And in that moment, she knew her life would never be the same again. The store was still, the hum of the overhead lights, now feeling strangely calming. After the storm of confrontation, the quiet seemed surreal, almost as if the world had paused. Lily sat motionless in her wheelchair, her hands still gripping the armrests, her heart finally slowing after the chaotic events of the past hour. The CEO had taken a step back, watching Karen's exit with a calm expression, his every move measured and controlled. Lily had never seen someone handle a situation like that. It wasn't just about standing up for her, it was about taking control of a situation that had gotten wildly out of hand and ending it decisively. Karen had been crushed not just because she'd been fired, but because the CEO had done what no one had dared to do before. He had taken responsibility for his store, for the people who worked in it, and he had taken responsibility for Lily's dignity. And that was something Lily hadn't even realized she needed until that moment. The CEO turned back toward her, his footsteps soft on the floor as he approached. Lily looked up at him, still processing everything that had just happened. It was hard to believe this was real. It felt like something out of a movie, an injustice being righted in a dramatic, almost cinematic way. "You did well," he said quietly, his voice much softer than it had been when he was confronting Karen. There was a kindness in his eyes that Lily hadn't expected. She had expected someone with authority to be cold, perhaps distant, but his gaze was warm, reassuring. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily didn't feel so alone. "I know it's hard, but you handled yourself well." Lily felt the weight of his words. He wasn't just talking about her handling the situation with Karen. He was talking about her strength, the strength it took for her to sit there, to endure the verbal assault, and to not break under it. She had wanted to stand up for herself so badly, but had been paralyzed by the shock of the situation. Still, she had gotten through it. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. She wasn't sure what else to say. Words didn't seem enough to convey the gratitude she felt. The CEO gave a slight nod, his face softening. "You don't need to thank me. No one should be treated like that. Not by anyone." Lily felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't from fear or anxiety. It was a strange, overwhelming sense of relief. Relief that anyone had seen her, that someone had seen the injustice and had chosen to do something about it. It was so simple, yet it felt so monumental. No one had ever done that for her before. The CEO leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed, but still exuding authority. "You're a strong person, Lily. Don't ever forget that." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words, trying to understand the full weight of them. She wasn't sure what she had expected when she first came to work at the store. Certainly, she hadn't expected to be treated like this. But now, everything had changed. She wasn't just the disabled girl working in the back of the store anymore. She wasn't the one people pitted or ignored. No, now she was someone who had earned respect, someone who had been defended, not just by anyone, but by someone with real power. The CEO straightened, pushing away from the counter. "I think it's time you get some rest. It's been a long day for both of us." Lily didn't protest. She had to admit that the day had drained her, physically, emotionally, and mentally. She had expected to finish her shift, head home, and collapse into bed. But now, she wasn't sure what to feel. Relief? Exhaustion? Gratitude? Maybe a combination of all three. But what she did know was that for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe again. "Do you need a ride home?" the CEO asked, his tone casual but with an underlying sincerity. Lily was taken aback by the offer. It wasn't something she had expected at all. She had always kept to herself, never asking for favors, never wanting to burden anyone. But there was something in the way the CEO had treated her, something genuine and kind, that made her consider the possibility. "No," she said softly, shaking her head. "I'm okay. I can get home by myself." The CEO regarded her for a moment, then gave a small smile. All right, but if you ever change your mind, don't hesitate to ask. I'm here to help. With that, he turned toward the office and began gathering his things. His movements were smooth, efficient, like someone who had done this 1,000 times. But for Lily, this was a first. This was someone in power taking responsibility. Someone who had done what was right without a second thought. As the CEO left, Lily remained in the store for a moment longer. The silence felt different now, almost peaceful. She let out a deep breath, her mind replaying everything that had happened. She thought about Karen, the way she had tormented her, the words that had cut through her like a knife. But now, with Karen gone, she realized something important. Those words, those insults, didn't define her. What mattered wasn't what Karen thought or said. What mattered was what she believed about herself, and that was something no one could take away. Lily took a deep breath, pushing herself forward. It wasn't easy to let go of the hurt, but she had to. She couldn't hold on to that negativity, not anymore. The CEO had seen her for who she was, not for her disability, not for her struggles, but for her resilience, her strength. And that was enough. With a renewed sense of purpose, Lily began the process of finishing up the closing duties. The store was empty now, the soft echo of her wheelchair wheels the only sound in the space. For a brief moment, it felt as if everything had fallen into place. She wasn't the girl who had been bullied. She wasn't the one who had been knocked down. She was the one who had been defended, who had been treated with dignity and respect. When Lily left the store that night, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel like she was the victim of some cruel woman's actions. No, she felt empowered. She felt like someone who had earned her place, someone who had been seen for who she truly was. The world had felt cruel, but tonight she had witnessed the power of standing up for what was right. And for the first time, Lily knew that she didn't have to do it alone. She had someone in her corner now. As she rolled her wheelchair down the sidewalk, the cool night air felt refreshing. The weight on her shoulders had lifted, and as she looked up at the stars above, Lily couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The world was hers to navigate, and she was ready for whatever came next. The next few days were a blur for Lily. After the dramatic events at the store, life had returned to its usual pace, but everything felt different now. She was different. The sting of Karen's words still lingered, but it didn't have the same power over her anymore. The sense of helplessness that had consumed her for so long was slowly starting to fade, replaced by something stronger, a quiet confidence. For the first time in her life, Lily felt as though she could stand tall, metaphorically of course, and face the world on her own terms. Still, there was something gnawing at the back of her mind. The CEO's actions, while heroic, had left her with more questions than answers. Why had he stepped in like that? What had driven him to stand up to Karen, not just for her, but in such a decisive way? It wasn't like the CEO was some random bystander who decided to intervene. He was the man in charge, someone who could have easily ignored the situation or brushed it aside. But instead, he had chosen to make it his business, to make it personal. And that was something Lily had never experienced before. As the days passed, Lily began to notice small changes around the store. The staff seemed to treat her with a newfound respect, their attitude towards her warmer, more inclusive. They were no longer just polite, they were genuinely kind. The small nods of acknowledgement that once seemed perfunctory now felt like recognition. It was as if something had shifted within the entire store. Lily wasn't just the disabled girl who worked in the back anymore. She was part of the team. One afternoon, while she was stocking shelves in the back, she overheard a conversation between two of her coworkers. She had been so engrossed in her work that she almost missed it, but then she caught a few words that stopped her in her tracks. "You hear about Karen?" one of her coworkers said, her voice low. The other worker nodded, her face grim. "Yeah, CEO wasn't playing around. She's gone. Fired just like that. And I heard she tried to pull some strings with the board, but it didn't work. CEO made sure she was out of here for good." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know the full extent of what had happened after Karen left the store that night, but hearing it confirmed that the CEO had followed through on his promise. He had really done it. He had made sure Karen wouldn't harm anyone else the way she had harmed her. And, the first worker continued, I think it's because of what happened with Lily. CEO didn't take too kindly to seeing her treated like that. He's a good guy, a real one. And after what Karen did, he made sure she got exactly what she deserved. Lily's heart swelled with a mix of emotions, surprise, gratitude, and a deep sense of respect. She hadn't realized the full impact of what had happened. The CEO hadn't just protected her in the moment. He had taken action to make sure Karen never had the opportunity to harm anyone else again. He had used his position of power to set things right, not just for her, but for anyone else who might have been subjected to Karen's cruelty. The conversation continued, but Lily couldn't focus on it anymore. Her thoughts were racing. The CEO's actions had not only changed the way she viewed herself, but had also changed the way she saw the world around her. It wasn't just about standing up to bullies. It was about creating a space where people could feel safe, respected, and valued, no matter who they were. Later that day, as she was wrapping up her shift, Lily heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up to see the CEO entering the store, his usual confident stride, making him seem larger than life. For a moment, Lily felt a rush of nerves, unsure of how to approach him now. What did she say to the man who had completely changed her life? The CEO paused when he saw her, giving her a small smile. It wasn't forced or rehearsed. It was genuine, warm, comforting, and full of understanding. How are you feeling? He asked, his voice calm and reassuring. Lily hesitated, then found herself answering honestly, I'm better. A lot better, actually. He nodded, as if he expected nothing less. Good. I've been meaning to check in with you. It's not easy what you've been through, but I want you to know that you're not alone. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. His words hit her like a wave of emotion, and Lily had to fight back the tears that threatened to spill. She hadn't realized until that moment how much she needed to hear someone tell her that. It wasn't just about the bullying or the cruelty. It was about feeling valued, feeling like she mattered, like her voice, her presence, had meaning. I will, she said, her voice a little shaky. Thank you. The CEO gave her a knowing look, as if he understood exactly what she was feeling. You're stronger than you think, Lily. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise. Lily nodded, her chest tightening with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She hadn't known what to expect when she started working here, but she certainly hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected someone to fight for her in the way the CEO had. And in a strange way, she hadn't expected to be standing here today, feeling stronger, more capable, and more confident than ever before. As the days turned into weeks, the changes continued. Lily's co-workers became more supportive, offering her help when she needed it, including her in conversations, and treating her like an equal. She noticed it wasn't just her. There was a sense of camaraderie in the store now, a sense of unity that had been absent before. The CEO had created a culture of respect and accountability, and it had permeated every corner of the store. Lily had also become more assertive. The quiet girl who once shrank into the background was now speaking up more, voicing her thoughts, contributing to the team. She had learned that her voice mattered, and that she had just as much to offer as anyone else. It wasn't easy, but with every day that passed, she became more comfortable in her own skin. One afternoon, as Lily was taking her break in the staff room, her co-worker Sarah approached her with a smile. Hey, Lily, she said casually, I was thinking there's this event coming up for the store, a community fundraiser. The CEO wants us all to be involved. Would you want to help with the organizing? Lily was taken aback by the offer. It wasn't that she didn't want to help, but she had always assumed that people like her were never asked to participate in those kinds of things. But here was Sarah asking her, including her in something bigger than herself. I'd love to, Lily said, the excitement clear in her voice. As Sarah walked away, Lily sat there for a moment, reflecting on everything that had happened. Her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. She had gone from being a target of cruelty to being someone who was not only accepted but appreciated. She wasn't just a worker at the store anymore. She was a valued part of the team, and that more than anything was a gift she would never take for granted. In that moment, Lily realized that the world hadn't just become a little bit better. It had become just a lot more compassionate and a lot more willing to stand up for what was right. And for the first time in her life, Lily felt like she truly belonged. Lily sat quietly in the break room, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup, staring out the small window that looked out onto the street. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind that seemed to slow everything down, but the events of the last few weeks still weighed heavily on her mind. The CEO's actions, Karen's departure, and the newfound respect from her co-workers, everything had changed. It was as though a fog had lifted, revealing a clearer path forward, yet the way forward still seemed uncertain. She was no longer the shy, timid girl who felt invisible. But who was she now? What did she want her future to look like? Her thoughts were interrupted when the door to the break room opened and Sarah, her co-worker, stepped inside, holding a folder in her hands. Her usual bright smile was there, but there was a sense of urgency behind her eyes that immediately grabbed Lily's attention. "Hey, Lily, do you have a minute?" Sarah asked, her voice softer than usual. Lily looked up, nodding. "Of course. What's up?" Sarah stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I need your help with something. It's kind of important." Lily's curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" Sarah set the folder down on the table and sat across from her fingers tapping nervously on the edge. "I know you've been handling a lot lately, but we need someone with your voice. The CEO has been pushing for some big changes here. He wants to create a more inclusive environment, not just for the staff, but for the whole community." Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. "That sounds great, but what do you mean by my voice?" Sarah's eyes softened as she leaned in slightly. "The CEO wants to make sure that our store isn't just another business. It's a place where people feel heard, respected, and valued. And we think you're the perfect person to help make that happen." Lily blinked in surprise. "Wait, you want me to help with that?" "Yes," Sarah said with a nod. "The CEO knows how much you've grown, how much you've changed since everything happened with Karen. He sees the potential in you. We all do. And he wants to give you the chance to be more involved in the direction the store takes from here on out." Lily's heart skipped a beat. The idea of being involved in something bigger than herself, of having a say in how things operated, was a concept she had never considered. She had always been the one on the sidelines, never one to take the lead. But this was different. This felt like a chance to do something real, something impactful. "Are you sure about this?" Lily asked, her voice uncertain. "I mean, I don't really have experience with this kind of thing." Sarah smiled. "That's exactly why we want you involved. You bring something fresh, something real. People like you, people who've been through challenges, have a unique perspective. And we want that perspective to shape the future of this place." Lily sat back in her chair, processing everything Sarah had said. The idea of taking on more responsibility, of stepping into a new role, terrified her. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. The CEO had given her the chance to stand up for herself, to show that she had a voice, and now he was offering her a platform to use that voice for something even bigger. The opportunity was right in front of her. It was an opportunity to make a difference, not just for herself, but for others who might be going through the same struggles she had faced. "Okay," Lily said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I'll do it. I want to help." Sarah's face lit up, and she immediately reached for the folder on the table, pulling out a set of papers. "Great. There's a meeting next week with the CEO and some of the leadership team. They want to discuss ideas for community outreach, employee development, and how to make the store more accessible to everyone." Lily took the papers from Sarah, her hands trembling slightly with excitement and nerves. It was a lot to take in, but she felt ready. She had fought so hard to get here. Why not push forward? "I'll be there," Lily said, her voice filled with resolve. "I want to be part of that change." The following week, The meeting was held in the back office of the store. The CEO, along with several other key team members, sat around a large conference table, their eyes focused on the documents in front of them. Lily sat at the head of the table, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been in a meeting like this before, let alone leading one. But as the discussion began, she quickly realized that the team wasn't just waiting for her to speak, they were looking to her for guidance. The CEO started the meeting with a warm smile, his usual composed demeanor relaxed. Thank you all for joining. Today, we're here to talk about the future, specifically the future of this store and how we can make it a place where everyone, no matter their background, feels like they belong. Lily felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. She had heard this before, but now it was different. Now, she was part of the conversation, part of the solution. The CEO looked at Lily, nodding to her with a silent encouragement. Lily, I know you've been through a lot, and I've seen how much you've grown. I think it's time to hear from you. What do you think is important for us to focus on as we move forward? Lily's heart raced as she took a deep breath. She had never been good at public speaking, but this wasn't about performing, it was about sharing her truth. She had a chance to speak for herself, for the people who had been overlooked or ignored, for the people who hadn't had a voice in the conversation. I think, she began, her voice shaky but determined, that it's important for everyone in this store to feel like they matter. Not just as employees, but as people. People with real struggles, real challenges, and real strengths. We need to make sure that no one feels invisible here, not the customers, not the staff. Everyone deserves to be heard. There was a brief silence in the room, and for a moment, Lily felt unsure. But then the CEO nodded in agreement, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's exactly what we need, Lily. A store where everyone feels seen, heard, and respected. The rest of the team murmured their agreement, and the meeting moved forward, with Lily taking part in brainstorming sessions about how they could make the store more inclusive. It was clear that the CEO's vision wasn't just a top-down directive. He truly wanted the input of everyone, especially those like Lily who had first-hand experience of what it meant to feel excluded. The meeting ended with a sense of unity and purpose. As the team filed out of the room, the CEO stopped Lily at the door, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did well today," he said quietly, his voice full of pride. "This is just the beginning." Lily smiled, her heart full. She had done it. She had stood up, not just for herself, but for the vision she believed in. She wasn't just part of the store anymore. She was part of something much bigger, a movement toward inclusion, respect, and equality. As she left the office, Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for it. She had a voice, and she was determined to make sure it was heard. The changes she had once only dreamed of were finally starting to take shape, and she knew she was going to be there every step of the way. What do you think of Lily's journey? Do you believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter their background or challenges? Leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. If you've ever faced adversity or felt like your voice wasn't heard, we'd love to hear your story and how you overcame it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more powerful stories of resilience and change. Together, we can make a difference. Let's stand up for each other and create spaces where everyone feels valued and seen. Join us in this movement and be part of the change.